It was a cold Tuesday afternoon when my girlfriend and I decided to go see the new Halloween movie. As introverts, we figured that choosing an unpopular day of the week would give us an almost empty theater, as we lived in a relatively small southern town. Upon arriving at the theater, our theory was proven true, as you could count the number of cars in the parking lot on two hands. After buying our tickets and a few extremely overpriced food items, we made our way towards Theater 13, which took the left side at the far end of the hallway. Our theater annoyingly assigned seats to every guest despite theaters being consistently empty, so, upon entering the theater and seeing almost no one, we made our way towards our assigned seats and began to settle in as the movie would be starting soon. After a few commercials passed, we sighed as a lone man entered, crushing our hopes of having the theater to ourselves. "Oh well, at least we'll have this section to ourselves," my girlfriend muttered as I nodded in agreement. Only she was wrong. The man made his way past every seat in the unnecessarily large theater and sat directly behind us. My girlfriend nudged me as if to protest, but instead I just picked up our things and suggested we move a few rows down. After getting settled in our new seats a comfortable distance away, the last commercial played and the movie commenced. Throughout the movie, I periodically looked over my shoulder out of instinct as something about this man didn't seem right. Every time I looked back, I would meet eyes with the man as he seemed to be watching us more than the movie. I tried to ignore him and focus on the movie. Not even 15 minutes later, I looked back after hearing a small creak to see the man gone. I looked around searching for any sign of the man, and then I saw him. He had moved closer by at least 4 rows, cutting the distance between us in half. He had also moved out of my vision towards the side of the seats that neared my girlfriend. "Switch seats with me," I said. She then took notice of the man, and it seemed he had as well. "We should get out of here," she said, standing up. I agreed, and we quickly made our way to the exit. Filled with disappointment and anger, we told the workers at the front about the man, only to be told that no one else had bought tickets or entered the theater, as far as they knew. They made their way towards the theater after refunding our money in hopes of finding the man. Whoever that was, we decided we didn't want to stick around and find out. We made our way towards the car and quickly got in and drove away. It wasn't until 3 days later that I would find out through the nightly news that a man suspected of murder and theft had been found hiding out in our local theater. Upon seeing the picture of the man, my heart almost stopped as I immediately recognized him from the theater. It was said that he not only had a firearm on him, but he was also under the influence of drugs at the time of his arrest. That time, of course, being the night we left the theater. I am thankful that my girlfriend urged us to leave, and I'm thankful that I obliged. I don't want to imagine what that man could have or would have done to us had we stayed. I'll never forget this day for as long as I live. I was 16 years old and the year was 2017. I decided to go see a movie with my group of friends from school. None of us really cared about the movie as much as we cared about just getting out and doing something on our own. We were a group of teenagers who longed for freedom. So we randomly picked a scary movie that was playing at the time and set out for the theater after leaving my friend Mike's house. We brought our tickets and food after being visibly shocked by the amount we owed. It wasn't too bad though, as we all split the price of everything. Being a group of teenagers, we were pretty loud and admittedly a bit obnoxious, and the looks of annoyance coming from strangers all around us did not go unnoticed. One particularly foul employee gave us a mean stare before walking up the staircase to where I could only presume the projectors were. Who cares, I thought to myself. This was the best night I had had in a long time. After sitting down in the theaters, we all pulled out our phones to post pictures of ourselves in the theaters onto Snapchat like most teenagers do. We then began to watch and laugh at the ridiculous commercials that were playing. That was until the last commercial suddenly cut out, and the screen abruptly switched to what I and my friends collectively agreed must have been the movie. "That's an odd way to start it," Mike said as we agreed. The movie was strange, the quality was surprisingly bad, and the film looked genuinely homemade. This did not take away from the creepy aspect though, as it seemed more real than anything I had ever seen. A girl tied to a chair could be seen on the screen as she screamed and cried in the most realistic way possible. Either her acting was A+, or this movie was not what we thought. Our fears were confirmed when we looked around to see the other inhabitants of the theaters with the same concerned and genuinely terrified looks on their faces. The man behind the camera was muttering under his breath as he circled the girl. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I was terrified for the girl. Then something happened. The man set the camera down and began to beat the girl with what looked like a wrench. Blood splattered the walls and everyone in the theater screamed. This wasn't right. Everyone began to run out of the theater and we followed. My heart racing, I began to shake. The employees all looked around shocked as an entire theater emptied out. Then I saw him. The man who had given us the mean stare was sitting at the top of the staircase with a small grin. I ran and my friends followed. We went home with no care in mind for a refund. I got dropped off at my house and hugged my mom, crying. I told her about what happened and she assured me that it was just a hyper-realistic movie. I spent the night searching for the film, the name, or any information I could find on it. Nothing. I wouldn't find out until a week later until I got the notification on my phone of a local news article. There had been an arrest on a local movie theater employee who had shown his own film through the projector. There was no confirmation on whether the film was real or not, and there was a disturbing lack of information on what was found inside of his home. Nevertheless, it was said that the man could face life in prison. I never found out anything else about this man, despite searching every couple months for him. The original article has since been deleted, and the theater that the man worked for has since closed. I don't know what I saw that day, or if it was real, but I do know that the memory of that day will haunt me for life. 3 summers ago, before all of this pandemic stuff happened, my friend Charlie and I decided to go see a new film at our local theater. This theater was generally very packed, so trying to get tickets was always a hassle. Eventually, we found a day in which we could both go see the film, as well as have contiguous seats. When that day finally came, we got our things together and decided to get to the theater early to claim our seats, as well as get some food. Upon arriving, the lines were as long as we expected, and we ended up finally getting our food just 5 minutes before the movie started. We rushed our way over to the theater to find a child sitting in one of the seats we had reserved. We kindly asked the presumable parents of the child for our seat. "Michael, get off the seat! I told you to share with your brother!" shouted who I could only assume to be the father of the child. "Oh, sir, it's not that big of a deal," I said, surprised at the anger which the father exhibited. "No, it is. I'm sorry. I told him many times that that wasn't his seat," the man replied in a suddenly nice tone, as the kid squeezed into a single seat to make room for me. I didn't push the topic any further, as I didn't want the kids to get yelled at any more than they already had. Waves of sympathy filled me as I thought about how horrible the lives of these kids must be. I couldn't help but notice how shaggy their clothes were and how skinny they looked. I noticed that the only 2 eating in the family were the parents. I reached into my bag of food I had bought and offered the kids a bag of Skittles, which they took almost instantly. "Hey man, you think I don't feed my kids?" the man suddenly said to me, the attempt at a nice facade now dropped. No, not at all, sir. I just had some extra food and thought they might enjoy—" "Well, enjoy it, kids. That's dinner." The man cut me off before I could finish. I uncomfortably turned away as the movie started, but this encounter had visibly shaken both Charlie and I. As the movie progressed, I couldn't help but notice the fact that any time the kids made any noise such as a laugh or an attempt at talking with their siblings, one of the parents would either scold them or literally grab them by their arm and command they shut up. Something about this wasn't right. I excused myself for a moment to exit the theater to tell on the parents. The workers told me they would keep an eye on the issue through the cameras and would take necessary steps to stop it if it was noticed. I was not very satisfied with this answer, but I thought it was better than nothing, and I made my way back to the theater and uncomfortably sat through the rest of the movie, as the parents hypocritically and obnoxiously laughed through the rest of the film. When the film had finished and the people began to file out, I made sure to lag a bit behind as to observe the parents and their children. I did not like the way these parents treated their children, and if someone else wouldn't step in, then I would. Then something happened that solidified my opinion on these parents. The smallest child, no more than 3 years old, tripped and began to cry. That was until the father smacked the child across his face after pulling him where he thought he was out of sight. "Hey, what's wrong with you?" I yelled, this time more power behind my voice. "Hey, pal, I told you to mind your own business," he yelled back as he started towards me. It was only now that I noticed this difference in size between me and this man. Nevertheless, I stood my ground as he made his way towards me and struck me in the face before I had any time to react. That is the last thing I remember happening until I woke up a couple minutes later to see the man and the woman both being pulled into a police car outside of the doors. I wanted to ask what happened, but the paramedics who had just arrived insisted that I be taken to the hospital to treat the minor concussion which resulted from the punch I had received. A couple hours later, Charlie arrived at the hospital with a horror-struck look on his face. He described everything that he had learned about the parents through a combination of the police and the news. The parents had 5 children, all of whom had been badly beaten and abused their entire lives. The ones who made it to the theater were immediately given over to the police, and the others were found chained up to their beds on the verge of starvation. This encounter, despite lacking a heroic ending where I valiantly fought off the abusive parents, taught me a very important lesson. That being that you should always keep your eyes out for things that may be abnormal, as they won't always be as obvious as this. The other thing being that it is important to stand up or report it when you see these things happening, because you might just save somebody's life.